You're listening to Story Struck. I'm Rachel, an editor and writing coach.
And I'm Nino, a ghostwriter and book coach. Welcome to our curious community where we dive into everything books and writing.
Now, let's get into the episode.
Welcome to this week's episode of the Story Struck podcast. Today, we are so excited to have Mike Alcantara with us, who is the author of the newly released The Problem Resolving Solution. And it is an amazing nonfiction self-help book that's going to help you navigate whatever hurdles you have going on in your life, small or large. And we may be biased because we worked with Mike in the later stages of his book, but I still stand by it firmly. So welcome to the podcast, Mike. Why don't you tell us a little bit about what drew you to write a book?
Yeah, sure. So once again, my name is Michael Alcantara. Just a little bit about myself. I'm married, kids, dogs, cats, birds, chickens, I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I was born and raised in the Philippines, came here when I was a bit wee lad, about 8 years old. Didn't know anything about the culture. I didn't know the language. So that was a bit, I guess, starting in my struggles. So that's where I'm going. It all leads up to why I wrote this book. So essentially spent time in the military, got out, and in the military I was doing IT cybersecurity stuff. So that's what I currently do now. But I also have a business background. So I try and get some entrepreneurial businesses and, on the side and stuff like that. So juggling multiple responsibilities and ownership.
He's a
And
man of many
yeah,
talents.
Yes.
yeah, it's master of none, I guess, so to speak.
Like a true ADHDer.
Yeah, that's true. Yep. Well, I struggle with that as well. So along the lines, I seem to find myself, I'm always busy. I'm always busy. Seemed like I was doing a lot of stuff, but inside it felt like I was really going nowhere. So it's like going kind of in circles. And I'm the type of guy, when I do work, I would rather spend a majority of the time trying to figure it out and try to automate it in some way, make it easier for the next go round. And then I'm like, you know what? I got to do something. I started reflecting, journaling, and that's essentially what created the book. Because I was writing, I was like, man, I think this can really help somebody else, if they're in my position. So that's essentially the beginnings of the book.
That's I feel like that's such a neurodivergent way of doing things, right? We have to figure out our own way of doing things. And through that, we figure out how to make it easier for everyone else. And because, I think with your book, there's so many tools in it that are practical tools. And I think I told you this when we first started working together, is that, oftentimes with self-help books, you have a lot of theory, not a lot of application. Even if it's just like, oh, well, do this type of thing in your life, but you not only have the theory and the story behind it in your book, but then you also have actual, okay, and now this is what it looks like. And then also, here's how you do it in your life. And also, here's an actual tool that you can do. You have the worksheet and things like that. So it's just it's a little bit more all-encompassing. It's beyond just theory, and that's one of the things I really liked about it, and I think that comes kind of down to because you literally had to figure it all out for yourself, like us spicy people do.
Yeah, and one of those components, because I'm the only child, no brothers or sisters, I couldn't really and don't really have it's only my mother, that I have here in the United States too. So yeah, you're 100% correct. Not a lot of people I could go to. It's kind of just, hey, I gotta figure it out on my own. I'm glad you mentioned that because that was intentional. For me, for example, like friendship and your social interactions and relationship. For me, the best type is not a force. It's more like just that natural growth, like we're friends first and then we become best friends instead of, trying to force things in. So I'm hoping that it's kind of the right steps to, especially for problems.
Yeah.
So, your book we know is the problem resolving solution. When our like listeners or viewers are kind of here with us, can you tell us a little bit more about what areas of life your book works for?
Yes. So let's talk about that title first, because I
Hmm.
was talking to, I guess, a customer or one of my readers. He's like, "Hey, you misspelled this. Like, this is not a word." And I was like, "That's a good catch. You are correct. It's a pun, and
Hmm.
on the resolving
For
part,
those who need a visual.
Yes,
yeah,
because we
the
are
the re dash
solving.
solving.
Yes.
So where that comes from, and I put it in the book somewhere in the introduction, the theory goes with that and the applications. So problem solving is in the case of a fire breaks out and you just put it out. Problem solve. So, that's how most people go and resolve problems that way. When you resolve a problem, you take it a little bit one more step and you kind of deal with the outcomes of the fire now. Maybe somebody got burned, so you had to go and help that guy out. A portion of the building got damaged or destroyed. Maybe you had to come up with a budget for that. The redash solving tries to put in a couple more steps before and after the fact. And I guess the best case, preventative. Why did the fire even start? And then in the long term, how can we prevent this from happening again? Because it took us a week to deal with the damages. If we put some kind of checklist or security plan, safety plan in place, it'll be half the time in the future. So I'm hoping that's the approach that people can utilize when they're dealing with, and I think I made it mention it as well. The book likes threes. There's a lot of threes in there. Problems, challenges, and changes that most people kind of deal with throughout their life. And they're not the same. Having an approach to a problem is not the same as having an approach to a change. And,
Mm.
so with that, that's what I'm hoping people will understand first and get the clarity that there's differences. Like running a marathon and a 400-meter sprint, you got to train differently for those things. You can't just go in, "Oh, I can't train for any of those."
But it seems to have like its roots in just the understanding, the solving of the problem, and then the resolving of the issue that created the problem, making the overall system easier for like, and it's applicable for every aspect of your life. I know that when you were going into it, you wanted it to be like that great foundational self-help book that was a real door opener, but also like kind of a manual for people to actually make those changes in their life. So I don't remember where I was going with this.
I think you were alluding to, so yes, you're right. Another three. Under the problem category, most people have three main problems: financial, professional, and personal. And then when it comes to challenges, same thing: financial, professional, so three times three, it's like a matrix grid. And so with those, once again, the objective here is to, I cannot promise you the best outcome. That's just with life and all its intricacies, that's just kind of impossible. But I'm hoping for something it'll have maybe a less impact in the future, just like with the fire analogy. So some problems it's just gonna keep coming. I'm just hoping that the first time it knocks you down on your butt pretty hard, but the fifth time it barely nudges you, and you can just keep going and move on to the next
So it's
thing.
building a strategy for resilience.
Essentially, yes, yes.
Yes. As a psychologist, I absolutely love this because you're taking them through this journey. And like you said, that you have to have that failure in order to learn from it. Like that's just life. And so, that's why we are re-solving the problem. Because the problem has already occurred. And now we're learning how do we move forward? How do we implement? How do we do better from here? And it's also like the 3 areas you are looking at. So, like, my background is health psychology, which is very holistic, right? And so we know that all areas of life impact all other areas of life. So, like, that financial is going to impact your personal is going to impact your financial. Like, they're all going to impact each other. And so, this process gets you to look at that whole picture. And once you learn and implement it, you can kind of, I think, start to see more of those connections that are going through as you're looking at your life a little bit deeper through the work and the book, through the worksheets and different things like that. So this is just very exciting to me. And I love the whole idea of that shift on words of the re-dash solving. Because you're right, it does have such a different feel from we're solving a problem or we're resolving a problem. It like also makes me think, like if I put the letter P in front of the re, we're pre-solving it for the future. So like in my mind, like it goes in all these different ways. So I just think it was so much fun. Um, how you took that time to think about what verbiage you wanted to use for your book. Because me as an editor, right, I'm like words, and I'm like, all right, is it going to be spelled this way, what's going on? And it was just kind of fun having that conversation back and forth with you in the editing notes about that. So I was really excited where it landed in the end for it.
Yeah, appreciate it. Yeah, I even with those, like I don't do well in Scrabble. I was like, that's not
Yeah.
a real word.
Yeah, and I was gonna say there's something really cool that you did that I feel like doesn't happen very often in books, where at the end of the chapters you have like a key insights thing. I was gonna say TLDR because that's like the slang, was it Gen Z term? Too
Oh
long,
yeah.
didn't read. But you have this like thing where you have like the key insights from the chapter. And I really, really like that. And I wish more nonfiction, self help, personal development, business books had that because so often I'm reading a book and I'm reading a chapter. I'm like, wow, this has some really cool insights. And I'm not a person who likes to highlight a lot in my books because I want them to all be pretty. And so, but I want to reference things because I'm actually using these as a study material, right? I'm using them as learning material. So I want to remember key insights in each chapter. And so you just went ahead and you're like, okay, well, I'm just going to do that. What made you decide that that was like the strategy?
Interesting you say that. That is a personal thing of mine. And once again, it's one of those natural growth for learning kind of deal. I wrote that for myself. So essentially, I'm writing this stuff. If I ever come back to it and, with the ADHD, I'm like, what is this guy talking about? And that guy is me. Like, what was I thinking? I just want to be able to reference something at the end. And and this also comes from my engineering background when I train our new interns and our junior engineers. I always like to start with a introduction, and then we're gonna talk about a little bit of what we're going to talk about today. And at the end, we're going to talk about what we just talked about, before questions and all that jazz. So for me, it's just another reinforcement and as a reference page, once again, essentially for myself. And if someone gets value out of it, that's great. And I agree. I wish a lot more books also had that thing right at the end, so you don't have to read the 50 or so chapters, pages.
And
Right.
what
Because you're like, oh, yeah, that was the subject of like chapter 3. What was that one thing he talked about I really liked? And you could just flip to the key insights and be like, oh, right, that's what it was. So it's almost like you have notes. Like because you're learning, right? Like, and you have your notes and you wrote the notes for me. And I like that.
And then for those that are, if you're going to go buy the book, do not cheat. These are not cliff notes, in your philosophy class, or, read read the chapter, or maybe skim, skim the keynotes, read the chapter, and then look back at the keynotes again. Don't cheat.
Yes, don't cheat. Something that I liked that you did is like sometimes you'll see in the self-help books, like with that section of the keynotes and after the end of the chapters, is they'll just have just a very simple bullet list, which is just like a couple words, maybe a sentence, where like in your book, you took it a step further. So like you kind of have like that focal sentence that would be like maybe a single bullet point, but then it's expanded with a sentence or two. So you're getting a little bit of meat versus just like hitting boom, 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 boom. And then what I liked is that like after like I've read the book, if I'm going through something or I'm thinking about something and I'm like, ooh, what chapter was that in? Um, or what might be useful to me, I could just flip now after I read the book and go and see, all right, I'm just going to go to the end notes for each of them, be like, ooh, all right, it was chapter 3. You talked about this, it's there. And then I know I can just go back and like reread either that chapter or that portion in the chapter without having to like hunt through the book. Where was that? I need it now.
And once again, that was 100% written for me because one or two bullet style is not going to refresh my memory. So I just need a little bit more, not a whole paragraph, just little side notes. And that kind of comes from my engineering background as well, because I write policies and procedures all the time, that kind of captures the whole spirit of the document that I'm writing. One little Easter egg I wanted to point out too, and I'm super proud of this, and I've probably spent a couple dozen hours, is my quote framework and methodology. I love quotes. I think there's a total of maybe 50 quotes in the book. And then based on, so this is my first book. I don't really know too much about writing books. So I had to go watch videos on how to write a book and kind of just see the baseline foundation, and they said, yeah, you can use a quote, usually only one time, the beginning of a chapter. I was like, nah, I'm going to break the mold. I put a quote in every section. And I spent a lot of time trying to find that perfect quote to kind of give a foundational structure to what you're about to read. And I'm hoping that will kind of stimulate your mind. He's talking about Meditations, by Marcus Aurelius. He's going to go talk about some philosophy stuff or something psychology. So I'm hoping that resonates with a lot of the readers too, gives them kind of foresight of what's coming up.
Yeah, I really like that. It gets you kind of in that mind frame because you may not understand the material yet, but like those quotes are ones that you've most likely have heard before. And even if not, you're able to comprehend what that quote means. And you're like, okay, this is kind of at the heart of what we're going to talk about now. So like my brain is centered and I know what's coming. So I thought that was
Yep.
so much fun. All the variety of quotes that were in there. And then speaking of quotes and connections, I know something that we both really appreciated in your book was the storytelling aspect of giving examples of showing this kind of in action and in a variety of different settings, right? Because now when we were talking about your book, it's like, well, it's not just for one area of life, it's for multiple areas of life. And so making sure that, you had examples in there and stories in there that would hit the marks. Tell us a little bit about kind of your thought process as you were going through deciding to have that storytelling element in there.
Sure, sure. I mentioned earlier, I started with a kind of reflection journal. Outside of that, also, I built a PowerPoint for every section and chapters that I already had. It's just part of how I kind of create things in my mind. So essentially, I wrote this book 3 times. I started with the journals, the reflection, and then I put it because I know at one point I'm going to talk about this stuff. So in those, I put in the little notes of how I felt and what was going on. And already, because it's problem resolving, I'm already putting in, just little side notes, comments. Well, this is a great time to bring up Joseph that you had met from that one time because you know how memories kind of, and I just learned this pretty recently. I'm not a psychology major, and just as a side note as well, I had to take a whole bunch of little tests and little assessments to figure out how my brain thinks to be able to write, a book that touches a little bit about psychology, not too much in depth. It's not an academia book, and at the same time, it's not. I try to put it in the middle, and it kind of coincides with how I talk to my peers. I keep it a little bit light, a little bit humorous, but if we have to get serious, we'll have that serious tone as well. For the engagement. So yeah, I just put in little side notes there, and that's kind of how these things kind of get built out for what examples I wanted to use. I know in there I talk a lot about myself, and then it dawned on me like, I don't really have too much insight for this. And out of nowhere, I met this gentleman and, just talking, he gave me his story and I'm like, I'm working on that section. He will he's 100% a good fit. So I asked for his, feedback like, "Hey, can I put you in my book?" He's like, "Yes, 100%." And, his name is Victor and he's in one of the chapters as well. So I started incorporating those as well as examples. And I think I even used one of his quotes, one of his favorite quotes, because I needed a quote. And once you start that process, you got to keep going now. You don't want to have one quote and like, "Hey, this looks weird. There's no quote here."
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I really enjoyed is that like you had you had so many layers of learning in it, right? Where you had introductory information that was preparing the person for what they were going to learn that chapter. You had the quotes and the stories that were engaging in the chapter. Then you had like the key insights that was reiterating the lessons of that chapter. Then in the end, you had the workbook portion, the worksheet that helps you move through like how do you do some of these things that we've talked about in your day and create that mindfulness. And then on top of that, you added additional resources in the back of your book with if you want to go deeper into finance, here's some books that I recommend in finance. If you want to go deeper into personal development, here's right? Like you had all of these things and it really seemed like you created this book to really create an impact. Because then on top of that, a portion of your proceeds go to your nonprofit, right? So, you just like really seem to be like, I really truly want people to have their life change for the better because they read my book. Like that seems to be like the root of what you did, like the Aquarius that you are.
It's correct, correct, correct.
Yeah. So what was that something that you went into the whole process of like I want to write a book that's really going to change people and stuff like that, or was that like an evolution that it's just like, oh no, this feels really good to do, I want to add more of that?
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. You know, when I was obviously, I have a business background, but I'm not a CPA. I don't have fiduciary trust for people when it comes to monetary advice. So I wanted the book, and that was intentional to make it kind of 1 mile long, but only an inch deep, in some factors, because I think I just had a little section about stoicism, 1 or 2 pages. There's way better authors out there that can write. I just wanted to get the flame started in someone. So, like, maybe they never even heard of stoicism and kind of what
I
my
When I
take.
read that, I was just like, I did not even that was not my perception of stoicism whatsoever, and it
And,
really like changed like my whole perception of it.
and that's the other factor, too. It's kind of what stoicism, because a lot of these things, once again, is based off of your experience and your background and knowledge on things. And, it's okay to kind of put your own take. And that was my take on how what stoicism meant for me. And it's 100% for someone else to have a different take on what stoicism means to them. But at the end of the day, it's something that you should definitely have in your toolbox to be aware of to get that clarity before you start diving into problems. And once again, when I talk about problems and challenges, major problem, not I don't know what's going on. What am I going to have for dinner tonight? That you don't need this whole process for that. You just throw,
So
yeah,
sometimes when the spoons be running low, I could use a few extra tools in my toolbox to determine what I'm making for dinner.
that could work too. That could work too.
So, the process of writing a book, as you know, is very challenging. So, I'd love to know for you, like, were there parts that felt a little easier, maybe at the beginning or at the end? And what were the challenging parts and how did you handle that?
One of the biggest things. So I'm hoping with the whole PRS structure, and now that we're talking about the writing portion, the 3 buckets. Once again, it's the threes. Somebody who's just getting started. You know, maybe they're afraid. I think me and you talked about that, the imposter syndrome in the beginning, correct? And then for those other persons that are already in the middle, they got going, but they got stuck somewhere and they can't get it back. And then at the end part for authors and writers who are almost for the finish line, but they don't have enough conviction and or just to get to the next steps to actually complete the book. I have been in all three. I have been in all three. It was hard for me to get started. Well, it was easy for me to get started. I just started brain dumping, and what really helped me out with that was the structure in my PowerPoint. Because the way once again, from a work mentality, I don't really know and can't be the subject matter expert in something if I can't teach it to you.
Okay.
So in that aspect, I needed a little bit more structured for my audience. Am I talking to a college intern? Then I'm going to
Mm-hmm.
have to break it down a little bit more bite size. Am I talking to an executive? I can just get out the specifics and go high level, but I still got to structure in some capacity. So yes, in the beginning, I was just dumping and dumping. And then all of a sudden, I had like 100 PowerPoints. I'm like, okay, this is too much. I had to thin back a little bit and kind of stick with the flow, so that's how I got started. And then in the middle there, I would say 8 months into the writing process, the holidays came about. And I'm like, oh, I'm going to take a little break. And that's a clear uh, aspect of the book when it comes to, once again, is in the threes: clarity, balance, and momentum. I lost all momentum for the book after the holidays. I took a little break and, it was just so hard getting back. Like, what was I writing before? Where did I leave off? And that's from experience. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's. I decided to take a break one semester. One semester turned into two, turned into a year, 10 years later, because life gets in the way. So knowing that, I had a really hard time getting back through that writer's block, you know. And then once again at the end, I had a lot of the documents, and I think Nino helped me out with that. I just kept going in and adding more and adding more and adding more and rewriting this part. It's like I had to draw the line in the sand to say, this is enough. This is the last piece of the book, and I'm nailing the coffin. But that was pretty hard to do as well. So yeah, that was just
Yeah,
my
I know that
experience.
Yeah.
there was some rough times there. There were some hard moments. Like if you could give a new author, who's having a hard time getting through their book, if you could give them one piece of advice on how to get through it, what would you say?
So at the very end there, at least for me, the driving point, like this is done, nail in the coffin. In the beginning, as I read my book, I was still super excited for it. Oh, this is so great. But at the end there, I got sick of it. And the moment you get sick of your book and the writing and rereading, that signifies the end of the journey, my friend. That means it's time to go ahead and start formatting it and releasing it and getting it published when you're totally sick of writing and reading. And I was there, and that's kind of how you're done. Hang up the pencil.
Yeah, yeah. Go talk to Rachel and get it edited and get it out
Mhm.
there.
Yeah, because especially too, right? You want to keep adding, adding, adding. And then, like, as we talked in the editing process, is there were parts that, like, maybe needed to be expanded, some parts that, let's kind of trim this away or move this here. Like, there's so much still ahead of you when you get into the revision stage that I think a lot of times newer authors, we expect our book to be beautiful and perfect when we're done with that first draft or even that second draft, right? And that's just not
Yeah.
the case because it is an evolving document up until like you hit your final thing of now we're going through to check, grammar, spelling, formatting stuff. Like there is stuff that's going to be moved and changed and it's don't stress about it being perfect having everything cuz you're going to change it when you get into that final stage of editing.
100%. And so a little, not an Easter egg, there's a whole chapter in the book for it, but because of the 3 phases where I got stuck in or I had a hard time getting back in from the holidays, and that was kind of an evolving thing. I was like, "You know what? I'm writing," and I created this whole process, this whole methodology, this framework. I had to use it myself. So with that, I think the first round of edits that I got, it was so overwhelming. There was so many red marks everywhere. I'm like, "Oh, where do I even start?" So I did exactly what my framework meant to do in a state of being overwhelmed and fearful. I just took one little step. Today, I will only work on what I called level 1 edits, and I'm going to work on something small, misspelled words. That's all I'm doing. That's all I'm doing. Just something small. Did that for a couple of days, and it built up my confidence. Like, okay, I actually got through a bunch of these edits already. Take it next to the level 2 stage now. I'm going to start rearranging the paragraphs based on the flow and advice of my editors and my book coaching and my feedback from my family and friends. So a
Mhm.
little bit more now. And then the last part was kind of the hardest parts, which is expand and or, trim some as much as I hate to trim back some parts.
I
It had to be.
Your
know, and I was
darlings.
saying that, like, maybe we need to kinda take that baby away.
Yeah, and yep, exactly. But that was the hardest part for me. And for people, it may be the opposite. It may be worthwhile to do the hardest thing first, because they know that's going to take the longest. But in the end, there's no right or wrong way to it. You just got to
Mhm.
move in that direction and be intentional about it, have the conviction, and have the structure and the discipline to do it 1 hour a day, maybe, you know, 5 hours a week, something that you can, accept and conform to and just stay consistent. That's what got me through it.
Honestly, I tell so many people, I think it's one of my things in my freebie intuitive writing workshop workbook thingy that I have out is just like the consistency is half the battle so often. Like you have to find a way to show up consistently for your book in some way, shape, or form that makes so much difference. And I think, listening to how you kind of went through all those things, I'm like, those are ADHD strategies too. Like, pick the thing that feels like that low hanging fruit
Yep.
in order to start building back that momentum. Because so often we hear do the hard thing first. But for some of us, that doesn't work. And one of the things that I think is so vital for writers of all types is to learn your specific method of writing because you can read 8 billion books about writing. And in the end, you still have to figure out what works for you. What does your brain do, right? Rachel needs structure. And so for Rachel, she needs to build out that whole big outline and have all of the structure and have the whole like plot line sorted out. Like that's how her brain works. Whereas mine, I'm like, well, I have an idea. And then I'm going to go in. And then at the end, I have to build the structure afterwards after I get all the idea out and stuff. And it's all about finding your own rhythm in things. And it seems like you really because of a lot of your with your own personal theory that you wrote into this book, it's your own practice that you wrote into this book, you were able to take something that was very foreign to you of writing a book that was outside of your comfort zone and create your own method of writing based on your own strategies. So
Yeah.
that's really cool.
And that was such a weird moment and weird kind of effort because I was part of my own case study, because I this stuff doesn't exist. I'm in the Air Force, we always say we're building the plane as we're flying it, at the same time. It was a little bit scary. So I'm like, what do I do with this? I'm like, wait a minute, I used to, let me create something, and just go from there and let me actually use it. So I became my own kind of guinea pig, because once again, never wrote a book. Didn't even bother to think that I would ever write a book. I always wanted to write a book, but that's a different story there.
Yeah, and I remember during the process, you had these moments where you're like, "I am never writing a book. This is, like, one of the hardest things I've ever done. I'm never writing a book
Yeah.
again." Have your thoughts changed on that now that you've finished the process?
Yeah, so what's in store for me? Yeah, I'm already working on a trilogy, but this time I'm doing a fiction and once again, I've never wrote a fiction book. What do I know about fiction books? I don't know too much about, well, it's a totally different writing style, but at the end of the day, I'm thinking, hey, I created a structure. I'm just using my structure again for the next stages of development to actually try my hand in fiction. And I must say, it's a lot funner. It's a lot funner because, don't have to pull existing things that are already, I'm making them out of, so the creatives, it's a lot cooler, I must
Mm.
say. And, it expands the creativity. So I see why in my writing group, I'm one of the only nonfiction writers. Everyone else is essentially fiction. So
Well, I
I
think
see that why they like that. It's pretty fun.
it's funny because all three of us have started in nonfiction and now we're all writing fiction,
Yeah.
which is pretty hilarious. Like, I don't know. I feel like once you get a little taste of the fiction, you're like, ooh, like it does. It just frees your mind and you just get to do your thing. And I love the continuations of threes with the trilogy. So that is great. The three is your number.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So, well, I'm so excited that your book is out. I'm so excited that the writing process and all the struggles, like, didn't spoil you for writing and you're continuing that journey. So, and I can't wait for more for you. Go ahead,
So,
Rachel.
yeah. So, where can folks find your book, connect with you, share all of the things shamelessly with us now?
Yes, yes. So I just launched my website. In the future, I'll have some kind of email thread announcements or any kind of special news. Like what's next in line for me, I'm hoping to take the book and kind of create some kind of training
Mm.
and licensing things. So in the future, I like mentoring, I like speaking and engagements and those kind of things. And I'm hoping to maybe I'll create some merch, have a PRS hat. I already have a logo that I branded out, or a
We
shirt.
need a journal so we can write down all the stuff
That's
from the
what I
book.
keep saying. Like, we
Yes.
Yeah.
need
So
like to take this worksheet in the back and like make an entire planner. Like, I need that in a planner.
yeah, so I was gonna say you can
Yeah.
get more information from the book from my website, which is just my name, michaelalcantara.net. .com was already taken. Funny side story, by the way. When Facebook first came out and LinkedIn, I went in and I befriended all of the Michael Alcantaras I can find. And we created this little group. We actually used to play Call of Duty online together. And it's so confusing. They're like, hey, Mike. And then I'm like, yes. I'm like, no, no, not you. Mike C. Like, go that way and go this way. So michaelalcantara.com was already taken by one of my social media friends who was a developer. I'm like, dang, never he beat me to it. So, there's Mike Alcantara realtors out there, so it was funny story, but that's why I got stuck with .net. So it is what it is. But in there, I've started loading resources. So one of the resources page, you can, for other people, the book is too small to kind of write, and your answers could be a little longer. So the worksheets are in a PDF format if you just want to write it out that way. That's kind of the introduction of the workbook that I'm also planning out for the licensing and or training materials later on. I already have some of the PowerPoint slides going through, breaking down the chapters, big points, the author's take on it, because that's kind of different too. Like, like, no, that's not really what I meant. And, from the director, Jack was meant to die. He was not meant to be on that door with Rose. He specifically made it for that aspect. So yeah, just check out the website. You just want to put it in the chat or?
Yeah,
we'll
no,
put it
we'll
in our
put
show
it
notes.
in the description. We'll have also a link to get your book on Barnes & Noble. You can also get it on Amazon. We're going to use
Yes,
Barnes
that's
&
correct.
Noble's link because we like them as a company better. So yeah, and we'll also have your website in the show notes, and any social that we can find. Any social that you have, we'll put in the show notes as well so people can follow along with your journey.
Thank you guys so
So,
much. Yes, super appreciate that. And I'm thinking at some point I need to condense my journal because my journal is about 75 pages long. Especially on this publishing route. Because I self-published. So doing it this way, so for those that are still wanting to write, so in the future or new writers, what's in store for them? And I think on my journey too, I got scammed somehow, so I wrote a little piece in my journal for that. So I'm hoping that doesn't happen to someone else. So I just need to put a structure to it because it's just me and a piece of paper, and I'm just
yeah,
jumping onto it.
we did an episode on publishing scams because
Oh, yeah.
it's ridiculous, and I just found another one yesterday or the day before yesterday, and I'm like, "What?" I literally almost it was in a networking group, and I almost joined just to be like, "Listen, people, this is a scam." But I thought that might cause some drama, and now I feel guilty that I didn't do it. Yeah, publishing scams are such a problem. So if you're concerned about that, go check out that episode.
Okay, yeah, definitely check it out. You gotta give it to those guys, those scammers. If there's a way you can make money and scam people, they'll do it. They're so resourceful.
Yeah, but some
Only.
of them are so stupid.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I'm just like, aren't you embarrassed? Aren't you embarrassed that your scam is the stupidest scam? I keep getting all these scam calls. Anyways, I could die on the hill of I hate scams. But anyways, all of the links to all of Mike's stuff will be down below. Please like, subscribe, share, do all the things. And thank you so much, Mike, for coming on to the podcast and sharing your wisdom with the world.
No, thank you guys so much. Super appreciate you. And, once again, we won't be here, or I wouldn't be here, and the book wouldn't be here without the help and expertise from you guys. So I super appreciate you guys.
It was
Thank
our
you.
pleasure. All right, everybody, have a great day and go grab Mike's book because it's going to help you write your book.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for listening. Check out the show notes for details and links from the episode. And don't forget to subscribe and follow for more. Special thanks to our composer, Micah Silverstein. Enjoy the rest of the music.